But it has to be, in my view, primarily bilateral. No matter what people say, if the leadership cannot stand up to the occasion, outside elements can have a limited role.
Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Foreign Minister of Pakistan, welcome onto our KT One-on-One as we talk about your trip out here in the United Arab Emirates. But I'd like to start off firstly with your stint as Foreign Minister. This is your second one, and the Naya Pakistan branding is out there. What would you identify as the success story in the 2 years as the Foreign Minister for Pakistan for the second term?
Well, I think we have successfully been able to defeat India's design to diplomatically isolate Pakistan. They had organized a smear campaign against Pakistan through EU Disinfo Lab, and I think we have succeeded in exposing them.
Mm-hmm. So there's been a lot of an India-centric focus that you've seen as well, especially with your last time that we were out here. It was a very fiery press conference, and then there was a bit of a suggestion that there could potentially be a strike. But now things are slightly changing. We see that the Indian Foreign Minister is also arriving in Abu Dhabi. We see and hear that the United Arab Emirates wants to play a role in forging the ties between the two countries. What's the agenda this time around?
Well, I'm here for a bilateral visit. I'm here to see the Foreign Minister of UAE, who's been very forthcoming, very supportive of Pakistan. This is a very special year vis-a-vis UAE and Pakistan. This year, we will be celebrating 50 years of our friendship. So it's a very, very special year for our diplomatic relations. So I'm primarily here to discuss with him our evolving bilateral relations, what we can do for the future in further strengthening our bonds, which are unique, very special, historic. Mm-hmm. I'm also here to discuss the evolving regional situation. You see developments taking place in Afghanistan. You are hearing of a peace conference being organized in Turkey, Istanbul. So it might give me a good opportunity to hear his point of view. As far as India-Pakistan situation is concerned, I can share with you that Pakistan from day one wanted good neighborly relations with all its neighbors, including India. If you recall Prime Minister Imran Khan's statement that if India took one step towards peace, we're willing to take two. Unfortunately, some of the measures taken by India, especially on the 5th of August 2019, vitiated the climate. And then you had their intrusion. Two of their fighter jets intruded into our territory and were shot down. But we immediately de-escalated the situation and returned their captured pilot. And today, we would want to move ahead. We realize that as neighbors, we have to find a way forward. We cannot go to war. Two nuclear states cannot go to war. We have outstanding issues. How do we resolve them? The only way, in my view, is dialogue. A peaceful, consistent dialogue. But in order to get there, India, that was responsible for vitiating the climate, will have to create that conducive, enabling environment for the dialogue to take place. And that can only happen if life in Jammu and Kashmir improves.
Now, what's holding the two states back at the moment? Because, from their perspective is, stop activities and stop being focused too much on Kashmir. Our side of the argument, or the Pakistani side of the argument, is that we want a dialogue. But what's holding these two back? International community says it's a bilateral issue situation. You're internationalizing it. But there's not
It is
limited
not-
gain.
It is not a bilateral issue. It is an internationally recognized issue. There are umpteen Security Council resolutions on the Kashmir dispute. India and Pakistan are obliged to do certain things. India has moved back on its international commitments. It's not a bilateral issue. It's an internationally recognized issue. Now, we have bilateral understanding, and India's preference is that they would like to resolve this issue bilaterally. We have no issue with that. We have never shied away from a dialogue with India. So if they create that conducive environment, Pakistan will be willing to sit and discuss issues. But if we want a lasting peace in South Asia, then you cannot wish away the Kashmir dispute. It still have to be discussed, and a resolution will have to be found according to the wishes of the Kashmiri people.
So how do we reach that then? Do you think your trip to the United Arab Emirates could foster the environment for that dialogue that we're expecting to happen?
No, I'm here for a bilateral visit. I'm not here for a India-specific agenda. My agenda is UAE-Pakistan, not India-Pakistan.
So let's continue about the fact of your bilateral relations. You do credit the remittances that are going from the United Arab Emirates, the overseas Pakistanis' contribution. So far, over the last few months, we've seen that the visas issue has been there for a lot of young, aspiring job seekers to come here, or even young tourists to be arriving here. Is that going to be talked upon as your point of view being put forward?
Certainly. I discussed the visa issue with the foreign minister when I was there last time. And I must admit, since my last discussion, which took place in December 2020, there has been improvement. Families are being allowed in, and there have been certain concessions that have been made. But work visas are still challenging, especially for the younger lot. And hopefully in my meeting with him tomorrow, we will talk about it.
And then in terms of, the importance of the ties with the United Arab Emirates, I know the Expo is coming up as well, and where do you see this going? And how often do you think you would want, and how strong of a tie would you like to create with the United Arab Emirates going forward?
Well, we have very special ties with the UAE. As I said, they are historic. They're well grounded. Sheikh Zayed is not just remembered in Pakistan, he's loved in Pakistan for what he did for Pakistan. We acknowledge the fact that whenever we've been in difficulty, our brothers in UAE have stood by us. We have a fairly large and a fairly active diaspora in UAE, and their contribution to the socio-economic development of UAE is recognized by the leadership over here. So we need to build on it, and there are plenty of opportunities for building on it. I've just come from visiting the Pakistan Pavilion at Expo 2020, and I want to share with you that hopefully once the Expo is launched in perhaps October, I intend to revisit UAE to showcase the hidden treasure which is Pakistan.
We're looking forward to that. Moving on into your diplomacy and the situation at the moment, the geopolitical scenario. In September, there'll be a withdrawal of the troops. Joe Biden, the administration has said that it'll move the American troops away from Afghanistan. You have your neighbor who says do more in Kashmir, then you'll have another Western or the Western power saying do more in Afghanistan. Where does that place Pakistan now, and how do you view the situation?
First of all, I think you've got to recognize that the international community today is recognizing what Pakistan has done for moving the peace process forward. Whether it was bringing the Taliban to the negotiating table, or the Doha peace agreement signed on the 29th of February, or commencement of the intra-Afghan negotiations on the 12th of September. Pakistan played a very constructive, positive role, facilitating role in that, and there is international recognition and appreciation for that. We want to take it forward. We want to take it to its logical conclusion, which is peace. Pakistan desires a peaceful, stable, unified, independent, democratic Afghanistan. But the process has to be taken forward by Afghans. It's their country. They have to decide how to reconcile. They have to decide what kind of a political dispensation they want. It's for them. We will be as helpful as we can. I had a very good conversation with Foreign Minister Hanif this morning here in Dubai. He called me and we had a good conversation. We will be meeting in Istanbul, and I've also invited him to come to Islamabad for further discussions.
So where do you see the roadmap going? Given the sentiments 2 years ago, they were quite hostile. Do you think this is now progressing towards an easy?
I think there are some positive developments that I would like to recognize. For example, the recent recommitment to the 2003 ceasefire understanding, is a good development. Kashmiris on both sides of the line of control was suffering on account of, unprovoked firing across the LOC. That, in my view, is a positive development. The fact that the Prime Minister of India sent messages to the Prime Minister of Pakistan on our National Day, which is the 23rd of March, I see it as a positive development. The fact that I've seen a change in rhetoric, toned down rhetoric, is a positive development. The fact that India wants to see, a peaceful Afghanistan, a peaceful region. Obviously, they recognize that it won't happen if there is two important players within the region not seeing eye to eye. So there is an overall support for a forward movement. But the problem is, are they willing to revisit some of the unilateral actions that they took, which really were against the spirit, even against the spirit of the bilateral understanding that we had? Are they willing to revisit them? And if they are, then Pakistan is willing to sit and talk. Kashmiris, and they also have to see, now dispassionately, I think in my honest view is, the Indians have to sit back, reflect and see that the measures announced on the 5th of August 2019, have they been helpful or not? And if they have not been helpful, shouldn't they revisit them? Today, there is a large section within India that feels that their Kashmir policy has boomeranged. It's not working. It has further alienated Kashmiris. Where are the investments that were supposed to pour in? In fact, the economy of Jammu and Kashmir has collapsed, and there are very, very, the image of India internationally on account of human rights violations is being, seriously undermined. So they need to rethink, in my view.
And the image of Pakistan, as you mentioned as well, in terms of how has that changed since PTI took over and since your stint? Do you think that's...
Well, I think the image of Pakistan has changed for the better. Today, people recognize that Pakistan is a country which advocates peace. Pakistan is a country that is which believes in democratic values. Pakistan is a country which is engaging with everyone. Here is a government that is undertaking serious reform, and we need serious reform in many sectors. We need civil service reforms, because if we want to improve governance, and one of the issues that governments in Pakistan have been facing is governance. So how do you have good governance without a very sound and well-trained and well-groomed civil service? And how do we attract the best talent into the civil service is challenging, but hopefully we will bring in changes that will attract challenge and will block flight of capital and the brain drain that took place in the last 3-4 decades.
And speaking of overseas Pakistanis, there's one prominent overseas Pakistani still abroad, willing to get his passport back. Is there chances of getting passport renewal for Nawaz Sharif?
Is he willing to come back? Ask him. I mean, if he's willing to come back, we will be more than happy to have him back. He went abroad, having given an undertaking that if he's medically well, and there was a lot of hoo-ha created that he was in dire state, and his brother gave in an affidavit, a bond to the courts of Pakistan. And what we see today is that, mashallah, he's in good health. He's moving around. He's making statements. He's addressing, conferences through the video link. So it seems he is fit enough to live a normal life, and thank God for that. So if that is so, why isn't he coming back to face the cases in an open trial? The courts have been they have given them a lot of relief. In our view, they have been fair in dealing with cases. So, is he willing to come back? You give me the assurance that he'll come back. I'll give you the assurance of giving him the passport.
Government can't seek extradition of him from the case?
We can, but that's a long, tedious process.
All right, so I'd like to conclude our discussion as well by talking about this vision of New Pakistan, and under your position as a foreign minister and being a very key figure of the government, to what extent are you satisfied with the direction that the country is in, and what more needs to be done, and what's your legacy?
Well, a lot needs to be done. Yeah. Believe you me, when you are challenging the status quo, it's never easy. We are fighting them. Here, we are trying to advocate a new way of doing things. It's challenging. We face difficulties. We have obstacles at every level. We are fighting them. But I am convinced that we will succeed, because that is what Pakistan needs. And that is what the youth of Pakistan, which is 60% of our population, is desiring for.
In 10 years' time, where do you see the country going?
Oh, inshallah, rising as a stable economic power with stability and with international respect.
Well, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, thank you for joining us, and it was a pleasure speaking to you, and all the very best with your vision for the new Pakistan.
Thank you. Thank you.